Welcome back, dear friends, to the Crimson Academy's course, Exploring the Advent of Divine Justice. We are on part 21, part 4, covering paragraphs 95 through 102. And without any further ado, we'll have our opening prayer. Thank you.
O God, my God, thou seest me enraptured and attracted toward thy glorious kingdom, enkindled with the fire of thy love amongst mankind, a herald of thy kingdom in these vast and spacious lands, severed from aught else save thee, relying on thee, abandoning rest and comfort, remote from my native home, a wanderer in these regions, a stranger fallen upon the ground, humble before thine exalted threshold, submissive toward the heaven of thine omnipotent glory, supplicating thee in the dead of night and at the break of dawn, entreating and invoking thee at morn and eventide, to graciously aid me to serve thy cause, to spread abroad thy teachings, and to exalt thy word throughout the east and the west. O Lord, strengthen my back, enable me to serve thee with the utmost endeavor, and leave me not to myself, lonely and helpless in these regions. O Lord, grant me communion with thee in my loneliness, and be my companion in these foreign lands. Verily, thou art the confirmer of whomsoever thou willest, in that which thou desirest. And verily, thou art the all-powerful, the omnipotent.
Beautiful. Thank you, Ms. Darla. Excellent, and welcome back, everybody. So, dear friends, we're recapping the paragraphs 95 through 102. In our last section, we were covering the Handmaidens of Bahá'u'lláh. And this is covering paragraph 100. And paragraph 100, the beloved guardian, he highlights that women are courageous and have this unique quality in this day and age of having even greater preponderating share of that courage during the ministry of Abdu'l-Bahá, as well as the beloved guardian. They took on that preponderating share of sacrifice and service during the ministries and going out to pioneer. And really, this was an incredible task that the ladies took on. And as mentioned throughout this course, some of these incredible ladies are such as Martha Root, Agnes Alexander, Mrs. Dunn, Clara Dunn herself. And we've talked about some of these other wonderful ladies, such as Effie Baker. What an incredible lady. Do you recall what she did? The great photographer. You know, that she went for the same amount of time. Going to the land of the cradle of the faith and to take pictures. And those were encapsulated in the Dawnbreakers. So we saw Mrs. Dorothy Baker, and I was moved not to share that video of the animation because it's very heartrending. But if you can find it on YouTube if you look for the type of flight that Dorothy Baker was on. And because the National Geographic did a video and then the full study of how that airplane crashed. And there's an animation on it, as well as a full video about that the flight itself. And it's very interesting because not only was Dorothy Baker on it, but it's also a bit about the aircraft itself and how did it come apart? Because now every single aircraft is designed better because of that crash. And I'll tell you just how that happened. That airplane that dear Dorothy Baker was on, the windows and the doors themselves were all square. And if you've ever been on an airplane, you know all the windows are almost oval, somewhat circular, and even the doors themselves are ovalish and almost circular, right? And the reason why that is because when they're in that shape, ovalish or circular, there's no compression points. So the pressure cannot build up on any specific point because it's ideal for the passage of air as it flows over. But if when it's in the shape of a square, like the one that dear Dorothy Baker was on, this is the predecessor to the British Airways, company. So this was a British Airways international type of flight. It's called BOAC. It was the company. But that airline, prior to understanding the flow of air, they had all square doors as well as square windows. So what happened was the air started having high intense pressure at a specific point, and it caused the nuts and bolts to have inordinate amount of pressure buildup. So some of the bolts flew out and from the ceiling, and you can see this in the animation. Okay, and so what happened is the ceiling literally flew off because and it caused a depressurization of the front part of the cabin, and then the entire airplane just ripped apart and exploded. Pretty dramatic, and causing anyone on that airplane immediately passed away due to their lungs imploding and then severe physical injuries, bodily injuries, because of not only being at severe high altitude, but it's all explained also. If you do research, it's also on Wikipedia article about how the survivors, but I did my research. I wanted to also learn about the episode itself. But yeah, because it's also about our dear hand of the cause of God, I didn't want to also to share that video on here. Okay, dear friends, we're going to be moving on to another incredible soul. This is another gem, hand of the cause of God. So we're going to be looking at, let me share my screen. So we covered Effie Baker, right? And let me move this over here. Make sure it is full screen for everybody. There we go. This is Effie Baker, and this was her gravestone. And we also talked about, and this is her memorial marker, marking her as the first woman on Australia to accept the Baha'i faith. And does anyone remember who taught her the Baha'i faith? Anyone?
The Duns.
The Duns. That's absolutely right, dear Yuda. The Duns. Clara and dear Hai Dun. And so now we are moving on to our next incredible hand of the cause of God, Amelia Collins. So this is a short video I got, so I'm going to put this on because these are much better explained than I could.
The very first time I heard of Amelia Collins was when I was a child, maybe 5 or 6, visiting the Holy Land with my family. We were walking along the wide path in Bahji, the only sound our footsteps on the white pebbles. and before us towered a beautiful wrought iron gilded gate leading to the shrine of Bahá'u'lláh. "This is the Collins Gate," my mother whispered to me, named after Amelia Collins. In my child's mind's eye, Amelia Collins too was a figure who towered above me like this enormous gate. When I finally saw photos of her, it surprised me that, as described by Hand of the Cause, Mr. Abul Qasim Faizi, she was in fact quite small, a slender, white-haired, very upright, elderly lady. When I began to read about her life, however, I realized that this incredible woman was indeed like this gate, strong, upright, and truly a spiritual giant. Mr. Faizi goes on to describe the gate itself as standing silently, as a loving remembrance of the one who adored the guardian of the faith, Shoghi Effendi. The more I read about Amelia Collins, the more I found that her life was truly one that was based on immense love and profound devotion to the guardian. As she herself explained, "Out of the immense treasury of all the writings, I memorized one sentence and did my utmost to follow that one injunction. It served as a lamp of guidance, shedding light on the dark and obscure paths of my life." That phrase is from the Will and Testament of the Master, where he says that the friends should make Shoghi Effendi happy. Whatever step I took in my life, any vote cast in the assemblies, any trip taken, even any thought, I would first ask myself whether my vote, words, trip, or thought would make him happy. When I was sure, then I would take action without fear. Millie, as she was called by the guardian and by all those close to her, was born on the 7th of June, 1873, in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. With 9 brothers and 4 sisters, she was born 7th in a family of 14. Her father was a Lutheran clergyman, and she grew up in a religious and strict household, although she is described as possessing a naturally strong character and often stood up to her father. As a young woman, she married Thomas Collins, and together they lived in Michigan before moving to Arizona and then to California. It was through Nellie Stevenson French that Miss Collins first learned of the Baha'i faith, and she became a Baha'i in 1919. Mr. Faizi describes how Miss Collins' first Baha'i friends in America had told her to write to Abdu'l-Baha and beg for confirmation and strength. He recounts, "The night she heard this, she could hardly sleep. Till morning she was contemplating how one should write to such an immensely great personage. At last she scribbled something, and at dawn she opened the curtains of her room, as if for the first time she saw the sun shining in all its splendor and glory, giving light and life to all things in the universe. She thought to herself, the sun shines on the world and all that is therein with such grandeur and liberality. Does it need a letter? Does he expect us to appeal to him? The sun shines in the solar system and never needs any such superficial means of communication." Then she tore up the letter, and in her heart, she was certain that the spirit of the beloved master Abdu'l-Baha also would shine upon the world of human beings and grant them faith and love. Like the sun, he had all under his care and protection. There was no need to bother him with inadequate words and supplications. She said that days passed. Then, lo and behold, she received a tablet from the master. She never showed me that tablet. She did not at first show it to anyone. It was a secret between the lover and the loved one, and was sanctified from any kind of attention. The only part she revealed to us was this, that the master addressed her as Lady of the Kingdom. But we now know that in that tablet, he stated his hope that she would be confirmed to erect a structure that shall eternally remain firm and unshakable. Although, as Miss Collins explained, her husband Thomas never became a Baha'i in this world, she also describes how during their pilgrimage in 1923, Thomas became so enthralled with love for the guardian that one day, while looking at the new and uncompleted building of the Western Pilgrim House, he exclaimed, "How can the Baha'is see an unfinished building every day in front of the guardian's eyes? You will see that that building is brought to completion." Indeed, although Miss Collins herself lived very simply, during her lifetime, she made immensely generous contributions to the funds of the faith. Whilst the names and amounts of contributions given to the Baha'i funds are private, and contributions are never given with the expectation of recognition, historical records show us the vastness of Miss Collins' generosity and her detachment from wealth. According to Mr. Faizi, her whole aim and purpose was to see her beloved Shoghi Effendi happy and relieved of cares. And when she took a step, she never expected or wanted to receive acknowledgement and praise, much less any public announcement. Amelia Collins' travels for the Baha'i faith at the request of the guardian were extensive. Amongst her many travels was a journey to Iceland in 1924 as the first Baha'i to visit that country. There she met Hólmfríður Árnadóttir, who became the first Icelandic Baha'i. In 1945, Miss Collins was invited by Miss Árnadóttir to come to Iceland. In response, the guardian replied through his secretary that he feels your presence in America more important than Iceland at this time. Ms. Collins was the first to share the teachings of Bahá'u'lláh with indigenous peoples in the United States, in accordance with Abdu'l-Bahá's tablets of the Divine Plan. And in 1948, the first local spiritual assembly comprising indigenous peoples was formed on the Omaha Indian Reservation at Macy, Nebraska. In January 1951, Shoghi Effendi appointed Amelia Collins as the Vice President of the International Baha'i Council, and she moved to Haifa to serve and lived there for the remainder of her life. In December of that year, the Guardian also appointed the first contingent of the Hands of the Cause, which included Miss Collins. It is interesting to note, however, that the Guardian had actually appointed her to this station several years earlier, though he did not then publicize her appointment. And one wonders at her own humility in never sharing this news with anyone until the announcement was made. In 1947, the Guardian wrote to her, "The high rank you now occupy, and which no Baha'i since the Master's passing has ever held in his own lifetime, has been conferred solely in recognition of the manifold services you have already rendered, and is by no means intended to be a stimulus or encouragement in the path of service. Indeed, the character of this latest and highly significant service you have rendered places you in the category of the chosen 9, who, unlike the other hands of the cause, are to be associated directly and intimately with the cares and responsibilities of the guardian of the faith. I feel truly proud of you. I'm drawn closer to you and admire more deeply than ever before the spirit that animates you. In those heartbreaking and eventful days and years after the passing of the guardian, Mr. Faizi says that Millie's will, determination, and absolute certainty of the ultimate victory of the cause were a great comfort, support, and guiding light to her co-workers. One of Ms. Collins's last acts of service to the cause was, despite her frail health and excruciating pain as a result of arthritis, her attendance at the annual meeting of the Hands of the Cause. Mr. Faizi writes, she attended the meeting of the Hands held in the mansion at Bahá'u'lláh, and even though she had to be carried to the upper floor in a chair, spoke with great conviction and strength, showering her abounding love upon all her co-workers. At the end of the meeting, we all entered the shrine of Bahá'u'lláh for praise and thanksgiving. She recited a prayer, every word of which took wings to the Abha kingdom. It was very evident that this was the last act in her heroic and dramatic life. Amelia Collins passed away on the afternoon of the 1st of January, 1962, at the age of 91. In her last earthly moments, she was held within the embrace of her beloved Amatul Bahar Ruhiya Khanum, whom Miss Collins had always showered with prayers, assurances of confidence, and a deep motherly love. Many years after I first heard of Amelia Collins, I came across Mr. Faizi's recollection of Miss Collins's explanation of her own personal relationship with that gate, and perhaps more significantly, with the guardian. Ever since my childhood, she says, I had wanted a gate. Even when I was very small and used to build little houses for my dolls, I would try to make a gate for the doll's house. I used little bars of iron and other scraps, but none satisfied my longing. When we built a home in New England, Tom asked me about a gate. I said to him, Tom, I do not want to put the money into a gate now. But nothing could satisfy that deep longing of mine. About this time, I embraced the faith and forgot about this desire of mine. I had no thought anymore for worldly things. After my husband died and I had been called to Haifa to serve, I offered the beloved guardian a contribution and expressed the hope that the sum be used for his personal needs. Time passed, and one day I received a letter from Shoghi Effendi. It contained a photograph of a gigantic and very beautiful gate and a note asking me how I liked it and informing me that it had been purchased with the money I had offered him. Immediately, I sent a message to him saying, exceedingly beautiful. One night, when some pilgrims were present at the table in the Western Pilgrim House, William Foster was among them. In his love for the guardian, he expressed the wish to be of some service while he was on pilgrimage. He was a builder and contractor by profession. The beloved asked him if he could build a gate, and Bill replied with the greatest delight that he most certainly could. The guardian then said he planned to erect the Collins Gate in the Haram Aqdas. Mr. Faizi says that this was the first time that Amelia Collins heard this expression. At that tender moment as she gazed at the beloved guardian, the sign of God on earth, who knew her inmost longing. Millie told us, "He knew that my life has no worth except to offer it at his bidding at any moment." He responded to my look with a heavenly smile.
There we are, dear friends, a short synopsis of her life, and an outstanding lady. And I also, before I found this awesome and incredible video, I had already put some notes that I had found on this great lady. So as mentioned in this great video, Amelia Engelder Collins, nicknamed Millie. She was born 7th June 1873 to a Lutheran family in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. She married this mining engineer, Thomas H. Collins, and they lived in Calumet, Michigan, and later Bisbee, Arizona. Collins met great success in Bisbee by developing the periphery copper mining operations that eventually became the Phelps Dodge Mining Company. This is the Calumet Hecla mining shaft. And this is the Bisbee Masonic Lodge, meeting in a stope of the Copper Queen Mine. So this is where Thomas Collins really amassed his wealth through this mining business. Millie became a Baha'i in the 1920s after the family moved to California, and she made her first pilgrimage to the Baha'i holy places in Haifa in early 1923, accompanied by her husband, Thomas. She was elected to the first National Spiritual Assembly of the Baha'is in the United States and Canada, and remained a member until 1933. And she was re-elected in 1938 and served until she was asked by Shoa Effendi to serve at the Baha'i World Center. So she was serving on the institution, the National Spiritual Assembly of the Baha'is in the United States and Canada, when this letter was written to her, namely the advent of divine justice, in the sense of written to that institution, the National Spiritual Assembly of the Baha'is in the United States and Canada. Millie traveled extensively throughout the United States and Canada, as well as Central and South America during the first and the second 7-year plans, assisting the communities with the consolidation and teaching work. Here is an actual newspaper article clipping. It says, visitor, Mrs. Amelia Collins, who arrived in Miami Monday from South America, where she was on a special mission for the Baha'i faith, was entertained at a banquet at the Ermey Hotel Monday evening. She left for Chicago Tuesday, where she will attend a meeting of the National Spiritual Assembly of the Baha'is of the United States. So that's actually in the newspaper. And here are the members of the National Spiritual Assembly of the Baha'is of the United States and Canada. Montfort Mills was the chairman, Roy Wilhelm, vice chairman, Horace Hawley, secretary, Florence Morton, treasurer. Here's Amelia Collins, Ali Cooley Khan, Siegfried Schopflucker, Alan McDaniel, and Carl Scheffler. And here's the National Spiritual Assembly of the Baha'is of the United States, 1937 to 1938. You can see her seated right here. So there's seated from left to right. This is Dorothy Baker. We talked about her. This is this wonderful soul, Louis Gregory. There's Leroy Ayes, Amelia Collins. And then standing over here from left to right, Siegfried Schopflicker, Roy Wilhelm, Horace Hawley, Alan McDaniel, and George Latimer. Thomas Collins, although having never embraced the faith, supported Millie's Baha'i activities. These included the financial contributions that maintained the solvency of the Geyserville School. In 1937, he unexpectedly died from a heart attack. The beloved guardian asked the Baha'is at the Geyserville Summer School to hold a befitting memorial service. And this is a newspaper clipping announcing his funeral services. Funeral services for Thomas Hoatzin Collins, 65 years of age, for many years a prominent Arizona mining man, and in recent years associated with the Calumet Oil Company, will be conducted today at 3 p.m. at the Grace Chapel under direction of Pierce Brothers. Interment will be in the family plot in Inglewood Park Cemetery. Mr. Collins died June 3rd in Rotterdam, Holland, while en route to Germany for a 3-month vacation and rescue. Formerly of Bisbee, Arizona, Mr. Collins had lived in recent years at that address in Pacific Palisades. He leaves his widow, Amelia E. Collins, who accompanied him on his European trip. So, dear friends, we've mentioned, and also in the video, mentioned at what an incredible lady, how generous she was. So these are just a few of the many contributions that she did. Although Millie lived very simply, and you could read her life, which I encourage every one of you to do, she was an incredibly generous lady. She made generous contributions to the faith. In 1944, she sent the beloved guardian a generous contribution that covered most of the cost of constructing the superstructure of the Shrine of the Bab on Mount Carmel. So the superstructure of the Shrine of the Bab, she pretty much paid for that herself. Other contributions include purchase of the properties on Mount Carmel, development and extension of the Geyserville School, properties in Northern California. These eventually were exchanged, and Bosch was acquired through that because of a freeway was needed to be extended, so Geyserville had to be sold. So eventually lands were exchanged and Bosch was acquired. Also at Davison, Michigan, the first publication of Baha'i literature in Amharic, 1934, first contribution to the Baha'i Khanum Fund toward the erection of the Mother Temple of America, 1939, contribution to the Persian Temple Fund. So this was to the fund to erect the house of worship in Tehran. So she made the first contributions towards that one. Defrayed the cost of the publication of the first 4 volumes of the Baha'i World. Contributions to Mother Temple works. Gifts of property near the temple and to the Temple Dependency Fund and various teaching projects. In a past part, we talked about the ancillaries for the Mashal Askar, the house of worship. And one of the first ancillary that was ever inaugurated was the home for the aged. Where did that money come from? Here we know. See, she had already set up a fund, Temple Dependency Fund, and various teaching projects, donations towards the purchase of 19 supplementary temple sites. So she set up a fund for the purchase of 19 supplementary temple sites in Latin America, Europe, and Asia. Contributions to aid embellishment of the area surrounding the tomb of Bahá'u'lláh at Bahji, and erection and furnishing of the International Archives building on Mount Carmel. The donation of the entire sum for the purchase of the temple site on Mount Carmel. So the entire purchase of the entire temple site where the Mashallah Scar is going to be built in Haifa, she paid for the entire sum herself for that. So in 1953, as mentioned in the video, the beloved guardian acknowledged in his message to the 12 annual conventions Millie's munificent donation toward the purchase of many Hazrat al-Quds and endowments on the 5 continents. And in his last convention message in 1957, for the donations for the building of the mother temples in Europe, Australia, and Africa. The beloved guardian Shohreh Effendi named the main gate to the shrine of Bahá'u'lláh in Bahji in her honor, Collins Gate. In 1951, the beloved guardian appointed Millie Collins as the vice president of the International Baha'i Council in 1951, and she spent her final years in Haifa. Here's a picture of some members of the International Baha'i Council in 1951. And you can see there's Mr. Nakhjavani. So Baha'i Council's aid directs 10-year plan. Here's Arizona Republic, Phoenix, Arizona, 24th July, 1954. It says Mrs. Amelia Collins. Here she is 81 years old and grandmotherly in disposition, is actually the well-traveled and informed vice president of the International Baha'i Council in Haifa, Israel. She is even travel teaching. She is in Phoenix for a few days to rest and visit with her brother and his wife, Mr. and Mrs. Oscar Ingelder. Last year, 2 years ago, Mrs. Collins first came to Arizona in 1901 with her late husband, Thomas H. Collins, a young engineer for the Calumet, Arizona mining company in Bisbee, which later merged with Phelps Dodge Corporation. She accepted the Baha'i faith in 1918 after reading the literature. At first active in the local organization, she graduated to national work. I like how it said that. She graduated to national work. We've got to graduate, right? So there she goes, and graduated to national work. Let me see. And 4 years ago was asked to serve on the International Council. She is right-handed woman to His Eminence Shohreh Effendi Rabbani, present head of the faith and grandson of the founder. One of her main tasks is administering the present Baha'i 10-year plan designed to establish the faith in every country and province in the world. There are now Baha'is in 228 provinces and countries. She and her husband traveled a great deal when he retired, but nothing compared to her present schedule. So she's 81 years old. And even the articles about her are coming out and their sales thing, she is super busy. This is what it says. She and her husband traveled a great deal when she retired, but nothing compares to her present schedule. An 81-year-old. A popular speaker, she is on call at any time to go any place in the world for her faith. But when she's in Haifa, she loves to conduct tours through the beautiful Baha'i gardens and shrine. So I've included this a short little story. I'll ask my dear friend Darla to read it. Go for Miss Darla.
There is a charming story recounted by Mr. Faizi concerning Mrs. Collins during her advanced years. This was during the ministry of the Hands of the Cause, when they were traveling the world to raise up the national spiritual assemblies that would in turn elect the Universal House of Justice. Mr. Faizi recounts that one day she asked, "Why am I alive? I am ill, weak, not able to travel and teach. What is the use of my life?" It was a winter's day when this conversation took place in the office of the Hands of the Cause, where a small kerosene stove was burning. I said to her, "Millie, dear, isn't the weather very, very cold now?" "Yes," she replied. "How is it that we can sit here, hold meetings, read letters, send messages to the Baha'i world, in such comfort and ease? It is because of that little stove that is burning. It doesn't say anything. Does it make speeches? Does it travel? Never. The stove burns as long as it has kerosene. It gives its heat to us very generously, and in that warmth we work. This is true of our physical comfort. Then, how much more do we need spiritual heat to give us energy and power to go on and carry the load to the year 63, when we shall surrender all into the hands of the Supreme Body? Now, dearest, you are our spiritual stove. You burn and we speak, write, travel. A beautiful smile lighted her lovely face, and she reached up her hands to me to signify that I should help her up and accompany her to her room. From Millie by A.Q. Fazy.
Thank you, dear Darla. So even when she had that sad moment when she was like, I'm ill, I'm weak, why am I still living? Here, Abul Qasim Faizi explains that, even a stove generates heat, and she was that spiritual stove, generating that love and that heat, even though physically she couldn't do too much when she was very, very elderly. As we saw, even at 80 something years old, she was still traveling. But when she was very, very elderly, she was like, I'm weak, I'm ill, I can't travel or do anything, I can't teach. Here, even Abul Qasim Faizi says, you have that warmth and heat and light like a stove, and that you're giving off. You should burn just like that stove and give the light. I thought it was a very lovely story to share. October 1961, Millie fell ill, and she fractured her arm, and she required hospitalization. And despite her frailness, she returned to Haifa to assist the hands of the cause of God in regard to the first election of the Universal House of Justice. Even though she had broken her arm, she was ill, she was so frail, she still returned to Haifa to assist the hands in regards to the first election of the House of Justice. She had to be carried in a wheelchair to the meetings being held at Bahá'u'lláh, and was able to attend all but one. January 1st, 1962, at the age of 91, Millie Collins passed on to the Abha Kingdom while being held in the arms of Ri Khanum. Her body is buried in the Baha'i cemetery at the foot of Mount Carmel. This is her resting place here. This is the cable that the Hands of the Cause sent on her passing, January 1st, 1962. It says, with deepest regret, share news Baha'i world, passing dearly loved hand cause, outstanding benefactress, Faith Amelia Collins. Unfailing support, love, devotion, beloved guardian, darkest period his life brought her unique bounty, his deep affection, esteem, confidence, and honor, direct association work, world center, signal services, every field Baha'i activity, unforgettable. Purchase site, future Mashallah Scar, Mount Carmel, generous gifts, hastening construction, mother temples, 4 continents, acquisition, National Hazrat al-Quds, endowments, constant support, home fronts, worldwide teaching enterprises. Among her munificent donations, urge national assemblies hold memorial gatherings, particularly temples commemorate her shining example, ceaseless services maintained until last breath. Airmail message, Hands, National Assemblies. This is from the Hands of the Cause of God. So there we are, dear friends. We captured so many different incredible ladies in this, because in paragraph 100, dear friends, it mentioned these handmaidens. So as I was reflecting and pondering this, I came across this quote. So it says, this is from Shoghi Effendi, it says, if only the friends could realize it, the glory of our faith is not that people with unique abilities do the work of the cause, but that it is done by the sacrifice of loving and devoted souls who arise selflessly to undertake work they feel themselves incompetent sometimes to achieve. God works through them and endows them with gifts they did not dream they could ever possess. Every one of these great, great ladies are just like you, dear friends. They're just like any one of us. The difference is that when the call came, they jumped immediately, right? And it's upon us. When the call comes, we got to jump. And it's like, you know, in the military, it says, when the sergeant says, jump, you don't say how high, you just jump. You don't try to respond, you just do it. And this is what they did. And they didn't stop jumping. Look at the example of General Jack. When the Guardian said jump, she kept jumping, even when the Guardian said, please stop jumping. You know, it's not a good time to jump in the sense of being out there and pioneering in that Bulgaria during a war. And says, come back. She said, you told me to jump. You told me to be here. I'm pioneering. I'm still pioneering. And that's the love, dear friends. And is not that these people have unique abilities. This is what the beloved guardian says. Not that these people have unique abilities to do work of the cause, but it's their sacrifice, their incredible and bottomless love and pouring out that they poured for. I mean, when I heard that story, that video of Millie, where she said of all the writings of the beloved guardian, of all the words, the one that stood out for her was to make the beloved guardian happy. Touches me so hard, right here, you know, dear friends, because that's everything else is moot, as they say. And that's what we should strive for, you know? We should immediately put forth our supreme body. Are we making our dear supreme body happy by what we're doing right now? Are we making our dear supreme body, the universal house of justice, happy by what we are doing this moment? And this is what we should be doing in our actions, in our lives. We move on, dear friends. We have two more paragraphs in the sense of paragraphs in this part. Paragraph 101. The only paragraph, technically, in the whole Advent of Divine Justice directed specifically at the Baha'i youth. So in paragraph 101, the beloved guardian highlights the importance of Baha'i youth. Although they did not have much experience and resources, he's talking about the youth here. Although they do not have much experience or resources, the youth possess an adventurous spirit. They have vigor, alertness, and optimism. And this is funny, I love this, optimism. The youth possess this. We lose that sense of optimism as we start getting older. We start getting down and having all the negative thoughts, supposedly because of wisdom. optimism, some people might say, is because they haven't experienced the life yet. But that aspect of optimism is something super powerful because you can achieve great things. The beloved guardian asked them to play an active role in the 7-year plan to teach the youth of their country. And it is essential to demonstrate that the youth have an intelligent, persistent, and effective participation in both the teaching work and the administrative work of the faith. This is so important, dear friends. Are the youth involved in all the administrative affairs of your communities, namely the committees in your communities? Now the youth, for the first time, I'm so excited, in our latest message from our Supreme Body, the youth can now vote for our spiritual assemblies at the age of 18. This is an incredible privilege to the youth, so that it's now they have achieved that level of maturation, that they're now having this role and responsibility. Now also the adults in all the community should be empowering the youth. And it's not just through junior youth groups. The youth should be in part in all aspects of a Baha'i community life. Are you involving the youth in your feasts? Are you involving the youth in your devotionals? And very, very importantly, dear friends, are you involving youth in all aspects of your teaching campaigns? And this is so important because the youth should be at the spear, the tip of the spear in your teaching campaigns, because of all of these qualities: adventurous spirit, vigor, alertness, optimism. They have a different way of looking at things. Youth are intensely alive. They have a sound core, and they also have a safeguarded future. Such participation will contribute to the progress of the faith, will affect the youths themselves, and spiritually empower them to display their inherent capacities to unfold a further stage of their spiritual evolution. So here, dear friends, and also you can see the importance of the youth when the Supreme Body called a few years back, when it called for all the conferences around the world, the youth conferences, and you can read the message which the Supreme Body wrote about the importance of youth. And it's not just falling upon junior youth groups. Not only at the individual level, also at the community level, we should be nurturing our youths. And youth doesn't stop at the age of 15. It's like, oh, that period of 12 to 15 is junior youth period, but that's junior youth. What about youth? What about the youth period? So youth is the period, and because then we say, oh, now we're going to shuttle them off to Ruhi books, but Ruhi books are super important. We cannot stress that also that because that is part of the institute process. But also, how are we channeling and are these resources, these vibrant youth, into all aspects of community life? Namely, how are you also encouraging our dear youth not only to become vibrant members of our teaching campaigns, of vibrant members of our home visiting campaigns, and also to become vibrant members of the institute process itself, but also developing the youth to be able to be knowledgeable on the faith itself. So they become, when you say, oh, have you taken book 6? Oh, that's teaching the cause, right? So teaching the cause, can you actually teach the cause? Do you have anything up here? Because first and foremost, you have to be able to know something to teach the cause, right? So are you also helping your dear youth to also be deepened, so that because they have all of these wonderful aspects here of vitality and life and activity, are you also nurturing these youth to be able to be propelled in the aspect of teaching? So these are, I'm giving out these rhetorical thoughts so that these, because we don't want to not only lose our youth, but if we're not working on our youth, the beloved guardian says, if the youth themselves are not at the forefront of teaching, the faith is doomed to stagnation. So this is something very powerful. We need to harness the youth and also encourage, support, and make sure that they're in all spheres of our Baha'i community life. So here's an incredible video I came across, and this is Ray Khanum. So I wanted to share this last video.
To me, the great tragedy is that if we Baha'is don't hurry up and go out and teach these people while there is still time, they will go down into that same valley of shadow, so to speak, that we went down into. I look at it this way. Here are the primitive people, the tribal people, the villagers, the simple people, the illiterate people are so much nicer. And from a human standpoint, so much better, more spiritual in many cases than we are. And this is the culture and civilization of Bahá'u'lláh that will come in with a new world order. It has to develop and it has to come in the future. Now, the youth of today, our youth, are beginning to come out of this valley of materialism and climb up towards this new world order. They're beginning to reject so much of what we have in the world today and its materialism. But these people want to have everything that there is in the 20th century, which is perfectly natural. So they have to come forward. They have nowhere else to go except forward into the progress of our century and our way of living. But if they can come forward as Baha'is, if they can become Baha'is in their own culture now, in their own villages, in their own civilization, so to speak, then to me, they will be lifted from this mountain over to that mountain. They won't have to go down through the valley of the shadow the way we have. And that is the whole urgency. In my mind, that is the reason why if we don't get up and go out now and teach these people, every hour that passes, we're losing our opportunities, never going to come again. They, instead of having all of this suffering and disillusionment and corruption and bitterness, they can come with all their wonderful qualities to this height. They can fly over, in other words, instead of crawling down into that valley and coming up on the top. And I think this is what Baha'is have to realize. That there isn't time. Every day we are losing ground. We see it here on this river. You see how the people are changing all the time. Wherever the touch of civilization comes, it withers. Then they're no longer, they lose their identity and they're no longer interested in spiritual values to the degree that they were before they began to become, so to speak, semi-civilized and go down into the bog of the very civilization that is destroying us, and we want to get rid of it.
It's so wonderful that we have Indian teachers too that can go to the Indians, such as like
the people themselves of the tribes of the people talk to their own people more clearly, better, more concisely than we do. But the pioneers have prestige. When we go with Leko can teach better. We help Leko to teach because they say he's come with all of these people from this very civilization. We want to save them from wasting their time, and so to speak. The two together, that's the key to the whole situation.
So there, Ray Khanum is addressing the importance and the urgency. You can see her addressing that. So here's an extract from our dear Supreme Body. It says, the key to resolving these social ills rests in the hands of a youthful generation, convinced of the nobility of human beings, eagerly seeking a deeper understanding of the true purpose of existence, able to distinguish between divine religion and mere superstition, clear in the view of science and religion as two independent yet complementary systems of knowledge that propel human progress, conscious of and drawn to the beauty and power of unity in diversity, secure in the knowledge that real glory is to be found in service to one's country and to the peoples of the world, and mindful that the acquisition of wealth is praiseworthy only insofar as it is attained through just means and expended for benevolent purposes, for the promotion of knowledge and toward the common good. Thus must our precious youth prepare themselves to shoulder the tremendous responsibilities that await them, and thus will they prove immune to the atmosphere of greed that surrounds them and press forward, unwavering in the pursuit of their exalted goals. Universal House of Justice. Such an awesome language of the Supreme Body here. I love this the whole thing is so beautiful. I love this last line here. Thus must our precious youth prepare themselves to shoulder the tremendous responsibilities that await them. And thus will they prove immune to this atmosphere of greed. You know, living in this world of a global pandemic, you know, where the air we breathe potentially could be the air of a coronavirus, right? So, and if thinking about the atmosphere of greed that is surrounding everyone, and that we have to prepare ourselves to become immune to that. This is what the Universal House of Justice is calling upon the youth to do. And that they need to become immune to this atmosphere of greed that is surrounding them. I love this language, beautiful.
So we need to create a climate of love and unity.
That's right, dear Tesfai. That's absolutely right. That's right. So in the last paragraph that we're covering in part 21 is paragraph 102. Paragraph 102, the beloved guardian is now addressing Panama. And I visited Panama on my honeymoon because, we went on one of these cruises, and I actually, my wife's, when we're booking the itinerary, I picked Panama for this sole reason. My wife didn't know about it, right? So I picked Panama as one of the cities on our cruise. And so when we ported into Panama, I was like, okay, we're going to go visit the house of worship. And so we got off, and I literally called a taxi cab and I said, I want to go to the house of worship. They were like, what is that? I said, I showed them a picture. Oh, the egg temple, because that's how they call it in Panama. They call it the egg temple. So we got in a cab, and this cab driver raced us all the way up the mountain, and we arrived there. And I don't know if anyone here or has visited this temple, and it's magnificent, and it looks simple compared to many of the temples. I visited now the one in Germany, as well as the one in obviously Wilmette, and here in Panama. It looks simple, but it's so stunningly beautiful. The location and overlooking the entire city, and it's breathtaking. So that was my short anecdote of my truly random, up here was planned, but to my wife, it was a very random trip to visit the house of worship in Panama. But as mentioned in paragraph 102, the beloved guardian refers to the importance of Panama, and he cites some statements from His Holiness Abdu'l-Baha in this regard. And as you have read in the tablets of the Divine Plan, His Holiness Abdu'l-Baha mentions that all the countries in Latin America, in particular, Panama, will become important in the future. And this is because of its strategic position of where Panama is. It's where two oceans are connected through the Panama Canal. And the beloved guardian then asked the Baha'i community to pay special attention to this republic. In the future, we'll understand the importance of this country. It's something that one of the first temples was erected here, that this country has mentioned by His Holiness Abdul Baha specifically as having a special weight, is mentioned in a whole paragraph in Advent of Divine Justice here, paragraph 102. So as having specific import, it's not just the mere fact that it's connecting two oceans and two continents. There is a lot more going on than that. So it's that this is has a very special space. And so, yeah, I don't know if, dear friends, any one of you have visited it. It's incredible. I've also had the privilege to visit the Panama Canal. And that was pretty cool. So yeah, it's if you ever get to visit Panama, it's an incredible sight. So there you go, dear friends. We just concluded part. There we go. We just concluded part 21. Okay, let me close this. Oh yeah. Okay, closed. Okay, that's good. Okay, good. Now, let me check my time, make sure we're good. 8:16, good. So we're going to start, before we start part 22, any questions before we close out part 21? Or any thoughts, insights? That was covering a lot of majestic ladies, and as well as we covered today Amelia Collins. And I thought, the more I read on her, it's just, I get blown away and the tears flow. So any thoughts, dear friends? We're all good? Thumbs up. Oh, I see dear Tesfaye. Tesfaye, any thoughts on you?
Yeah, well, I come late today, but I had one question in my mind is about the Baha'i cemetery in the World Center.
Yes.
How is that is to be happen most of the time? Because the Baha'is, according to the law, is to be only 1 hour to travel. But is this people that buried over there is to be passed away in the Holy Land, or how that happens? Some of the hand of the cause or other Baha'is? Or is there any restriction?
Great question, dear Tesfaye. I don't know the exact answer, and I don't want to per se speak out of place on this, but I know that if, a hand of the cause of God, or God forbid, a member of the house or International Teaching Center or whatever passes away in Haifa, they will be buried in the resting places in the World Center. And there is a resting Baha'i gardens there. But that is up to the Universal House of Justice if they can be buried there. But it's if some accident happens or some unforeseeable thing happens and they pass away in the World Center, there's a Baha'i gardens there. But
yeah, if you see that Shoghi Effendi was buried in England.
That's right.
And then is there any meaning or wisdom behind, or anything that we need to know, or just only not to travel more than 1 hour? Your knowledge.
That's a great question. The beloved guardian was on a trip in 1957, and you can read this in Priceless Pearl. In 1957, he was on a trip to London, and he was working to acquire specific artifacts for the archives. And he caught Asiatic influenza, the Asiatic flu, during his trip there. And this is very similar to a strain of the swine flu or bird flu. These are all parts of the influenza virus. And that this is Asiatic influenza. And it killed about 1 million people in that year.
Just like COVID.
Different. It's different. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, it was a terrible virus. It killed about 1 million people in 1957. And the beloved guardian caught it, and and you could read much better and much more detailed in Priceless Pearl. He immediately was, when he caught it, was very weak, and he caught a fever. And several days after, he passed away. It was totally unexpected. It was, it caught the whole Baha'i world off guard. And you could see the following month, the prior month, and it was published in November 1957 in the Baha'i News magazine. So he passed away in November 4th, 1957. But in November 1957, Baha'i News, it was announced his last contingent. So his last contingent was announced, because his last contingent was announced, was October 1957. So his third contingent, his last contingent, was announced October 1957. And that was, so it almost makes you think that he knew something was going to happen. But I don't want to go down that road. But it was real. And then on top of it, at that point, he was also setting up the world for these incredible conferences, international conferences that were going to happen to culminate at the ending of the 10-year crusade. And so he was working to get these, he was announcing these 12 conferences that were going to happen around the world. So it came in the last message to the Baha'i world, 1957. And that same month, he passed away, right after he announced his last contingent. And you can see it, you go to, and I'll send it to the class, just because I have it accessible. But month, November 1957, Baha'i News, wonderful announcement. Contingent announces third contingent, announcement of these conferences. Next month, December 1957, Baha'i News, tragedy, Baha'i world, mourning, loss, and so it's literally like total shock, total surprise. So that was really, dear Tesfaya, it was, the whole world was unexpected of that tragedy. So I'll send that to the class also, so you could see what I was describing. Okay, so now, dear friends, we're going to, let me check our time. Yeah, we got 10 minutes. So let's get into part 22. At least we'll get through some of the reading. And so next class, we could jump into the actual session. So let me get this going. Part 22. Okay. There's only 24 parts. I'm so impressed you guys have had the, what would the word be? Perseverance and fortitude to bear all of this with me. But I'm impressed. So here we go. This is part 22. Okay, awesome. So paragraphs 103 through 107. That's your homework, dear friends, 103 through 107, because we're not probably going to get through the whole part tonight. But so next class, I expect you to have read these. So during these paragraphs, we're going to be exploring these events of unimaginable magnitude. Remember, this is written in 1938, December 25th. So what event is coming up of unimaginable magnitude? Anybody?
World War II.
There you go, of course, right? World War II. World War II. And the beloved guardian is now, he's in these upcoming paragraphs, he's going to be talking about these events of unimaginable magnitude. He's actually foretelling of these crises that are going to be coming up. He talks about, in this paragraph, twin processes of integration and disintegration. And then he also talks about beyond the 7-year plan. Okay, so these are the themes that will be addressed in these paragraphs. So let's get through them, okay? So Miss Marianne, I just see the very top tuft of your beautiful white hair. So yeah, you're up, you are our first reader, so go for it. Don't forget to unmute yourself, Miss Marianne, and then you're our reader.
Okay,
There you go.
sorry.
There you
Okay,
go. Excellent.
I'll start again. Such, dearly beloved friends, is the vista that stretches before the eyes and challenges the resources of the American Baha'i community in these, the concluding years of the first century of the Baha'i era. Such are the qualities and qualifications demanded of them for the proper discharge of their responsibilities and duties. Such are the requirements, the possibilities, and the objectives of the plan that claims every ounce of their energy. Who knows but that these few remaining fast fleeting years may not be pregnant with events of unimaginable magnitude, with ordeals more severe than any that humanity has as yet experienced, with conflicts more devastating than any which have preceded them. Dangers, however sinister, must at no time dim the radiance of their newborn faith. Strife and confusion, however bewildering, must never befog their vision. Tribulations, however afflictive, must never shatter their resolve. Denunciations, however clamorous, must never sap their loyalty. Upheavals, however cataclysmic, must never deflect their course. The present plan, embodying the budding hopes of a departed master, must be pursued, relentlessly pursued. Whatever may befall them in the future, however distracting the crises that may agitate their country or the world.
Beautifully read, Miss Marianne. This is one of the coolest paragraphs, and the style of the beloved guardian. I love this from dangers all the way to course. Whenever he says something, dangers, however sinister, whenever he says something, dangers, and then he goes, however sinister, must at no time dim the radiance of this faith. Strife and confusion, however bewildering. Is he always using that however? So it's almost poetic in English in the sense of how his style is. And you can see how he repeats it. However clamorous, must never sap their loyalty. Upheavals, however cataclysmic, must never deflect their course. It's poetic in his style. I just, as someone who loves and appreciates English, it's just so beautiful. Beautifully read. Thank you, Miss Marianne. Okay, Miss Darla, you're up. Go for it.
Far from yielding in their resolve, far from growing oblivious of their task, they should at no time, however much buffeted by circumstances, forget that the synchronization of such world-shaking crises with the progressive unfoldment and fruition of their divinely appointed task is itself the work of providence, the design of an inscrutable wisdom, and the purpose of an all-compelling will, a will that directs and controls in its own mysterious way both the fortunes of the faith and the destinies of men. Such simultaneous processes of rise and of fall, of integration and of disintegration, of order and chaos, with their continuous and reciprocal reactions on each other, are but aspects of a greater plan, one and indivisible, whose source is God, whose author is Bahá'u'lláh, the theater of whose operation is the entire planet, and whose ultimate objectives are the unity of the human race and the peace of all mankind.
Of these quotes, whose theater of operations is the entire planet. So beautiful. Yeah, and so this is mentioning now here integration and disintegration. So this was first mentioned, as I mentioned, in Unfoldment of World Civilization. So that is one of the world order letters of the Beloved Guardian. And hopefully I will get a course out on that one. But till then, we're marching on. So let me check our time, 8:32. Maybe let's read this one last paragraph and we'll close it here for this evening. So I may have one more reader. And our reader is Miss Deborah. Miss Deborah, you're our reader for this evening. Go for it.
Reflections such as these should steel the resolve of the entire Baha'i community, should dissipate their forebodings, and arouse them to rededicate themselves to every single provision of that divine charter, whose outline has been delineated for them by the pen of Abdu'l-Baha. The 7-year plan, as already stated, is but the initial stage, a stepping stone to the unfoldment of the implications of this charter. The impulse, originally generated through the movement of that pen, and which is now driving forward with increasing momentum, the machinery of the 7-year plan must, in the opening years of the next century, be further accelerated and impel the American Baha'i community to launch further stages in the unfoldment of the divine plan. Stages that will carry it far beyond the shores of the Northern Hemisphere into lands and among peoples where that community's noblest acts of heroism are to be performed.
Beautifully read, Miss Deborah. Thank you so much. All right, there we go. So reflecting on these should steel our resolve, right? We should rededicate ourselves to every single provision of these plans. And it's just like we are studying here the advent of divine justice, it should steel our resolve. And so that we should be rededicating ourselves. So dear friends, there we are. We finished up paragraphs 95 through 102, and now we're getting into our next section of 103 through 107. So any questions, thoughts at this time before we close it off for this evening and have a closing prayer? Or any words of inspiration, or are we good? We're good. So happy to see every one of you. And look at the McGregors down in the corner, at least my corner. Lovely to see you guys. So, and it brings me joy to see all your faces every week. So thank you very much. Thank you for you, every one of you. So next week we should finish up part 22 and then get ever closer to having the great accomplishment of together finishing the Advent of Divine Justice, studying it quite intensively together. So I'm going to ask my dear friend Mary McGregor if she could share a prayer with us, just because I love seeing Dennis laugh as she was called. So, so I'm asking my dear friend Mary if she could say a prayer for us. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you very much.
Okay. O thou merciful God, O thou who art mighty and powerful, O thou most kind Father, these servants have gathered together, turning to thee, supplicating thy threshold, desiring thine endless bounties from thy great assurance. They have no purpose save thy good pleasure. They have no intention save the service to the world of humanity. O God, make this assemblage radiant. Make the hearts merciful. Confer the bounties of the Holy Spirit. Endow them with the power from heaven. Bless them with heavenly minds. Increase their sincerity, so that with all humility and contrition, they may turn to thy kingdom and be occupied with service to the world of humanity. May each one become a radiant candle. May each one become a brilliant star. May each one become beautiful in color and redolent in fragrance in the kingdom of God. O kind Father, confer thy blessings. Consider not our shortcomings. Shelter us under thy protection. Remember not our sins. Heal us with thy mercy. We are weak, thou art mighty. We are poor, thou art rich. We are sick, thou art the physician. We are needy, thou art most generous. O God, endow us with thy providence. Thou art the powerful. Thou art the giver. Thou art the beneficent. Abdu'l-Baha.
Thank you very much, Mary. Thank you very much, every one of you. Thank you so much, and wishing every one of you a wonderful week. Thank you, all of you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, Allah.
Lao Pa.
Bye-bye.
Lao Pa.
Lao Pa.